Hello and welcome to a Valentine's Day themed video, except with a twist. So I'm here to give you some book recommendations that centre around the topic of love, but not in terms of a romance. I don't read a lot of romance. Every time I dip my toes into that genre, I do end up enjoying it, but it's not normally my go-to. But I do still love reading about complex relationships and love in all its dark and twisty and messy and weird forms. So I thought today I would give you a bunch of book recommendations and we can go through the messiness of love together. So grab your cup of tea or your hot drink of choice, settle in, and I will tell you about the books that I have to show you today. I've got 4 little sub-themes. First, we're going to start with books about obsession. So these are books about where love takes a sort of dark turn into obsession, whether it's unrequited or not, or whether there's some different forms of obsession here. I'm going to start with My Husband by Maud Ventura. This is actually translated from the French. This follows a woman who has a seemingly perfect life. She is very beautiful. She has a successful career. She has 2 children, a lovely house, and a husband who, even though they've been together for 15 years, she's still obsessed. She still is completely and utterly deeply in love with him. Every encounter they have, she plans meticulously. She never wants any encounter to go badly. She is constantly thinking about how to make his life more perfect and how to be more perfect for him. But unfortunately, she isn't sure that he feels the same way about her, so she starts to test him. And these tests start to become a little bit weirder and a bit more unhinged as the book goes along. Very dark, very twisty, very much a sort of literary thriller, but one I really loved. Next up we have Absorbed by Kylie Whitehead. This is more of a literary horror. So this is about a woman called Alison who has been with her boyfriend since university. She's not very happy with her life. She doesn't love her job. She doesn't have really anything interesting going on except for the fact that she is this guy's girlfriend. That's her main personality trait, I guess. And so when she starts to think that he's pulling away, she starts to panic that he might leave her, and as a result, absorbs him. Yeah. Then we have another literary book called Creep, a Love Story by Emma von Straten. Out of all of the ones on my TBR for this section, this is probably the one I'm most interested in. So it's giving a stalker vibe. So I actually think the book summary is really good for this one. So Alice and Tom are made for each other. Deeply connected, they share a flat in London, go to galleries together, enjoy the same books and wine. They even share a toothbrush. It's all picture perfect. Except Alice and Tom have never met. Alice has been cleaning Tom's apartment every Wednesday for a year. As every week passes, she spirals deeper into infatuation, imagining a love so powerful it might erase a lifetime of self-hatred and loneliness. Which does sound creepy. I feel like I would read this in one sitting. It sounds so interesting. Our next one is more of a contemporary fiction. It's called Acts of Desperation by Megan Nolan. This is about a woman who falls deeply and obsessively in love with an artist, I think, or a writer. She thought they have this all-consuming, quite, I guess, toxic relationship, and he then breaks up with her, and that causes her to spiral into, I guess, jealousy, obsession, insanity, all those lovely topics. Next up we have a classic. It's a thriller, but it's more of a classic, and it's one I read a couple of years ago and found it so gripping and so creepy and interesting. So this follows a man called Frederick, who is a bit of a recluse. He likes collecting butterflies and taking photographs. And one day he wins, I guess, the equivalent of the lottery or some sort of lottery, buys a house and very calmly abducts a woman that he's been obsessed with for years and keeps her there in the hopes that she will grow to love him back. And it's creepy. Another one I've read is Vladimir by Julia May Jonas. I read this a good few years ago now, but I do remember it being a really good insight into obsession, but this time from a more older woman. So this follows a professor. She's, I think, in her 50s, and she works at the same university as her husband, who's also a professor. Her husband's going through a bit of controversy because he's been sleeping with young students, and while this is going on, she becomes obsessed with a new young novelist who's just arrived at the university, and it's basically about how your morals and your desires can conflict, I guess. Then we have a non-fiction which I read last year, called Simple Passion by Annie Ernaux. I imagine you've heard of Annie Ernaux. She's a very incredible French author, writes with just so much realness, if that's a good way of saying it. She's just very real with her writing. I read a few of her books last year. This was a really interesting one. It follows the passion of a 2-year affair with a married man and how it becomes like a sickness and an obsession. It's just started raining. I don't know if you can hear that. It's really loud. Number 8 for this one, we have Open Wide by Jessica Gross. This is, again, a literary... all I read is literary fiction, okay? That's just what I'm going to recommend. Kind of similar to Absorbed in that a woman is obsessed with her boyfriend. So obsessed that she just can't get close enough. She wants to get as close as physically possible. I guess wants to get inside him, into his mouth and inside him. As you do. The next one I haven't read, but is another one of those ones that I've had on my Kindle for ages. It's a literary thriller. So this is following 2 men this time. It's giving like dark academia, but it's following a guy called Paul and another guy called Julian who become friends at university. Their friendship spirals into a very codependent, all-consuming, and this obsession with each other causes some sort of act of violence. I don't know what that is. That's what the summary says. But it just sounds very dark academia. And as someone whose favourite book is The Secret History, I am always searching for a dark academia that lives up to that for me. And then finally in this section, we have a literary horror thriller vibe called Hysterical by Amber Dean. This is one I only heard of a few days ago. It follows a woman called Jessie who is living in New York City, seems to have it all together, goes out partying, has quite a lot of friends, seems to have her life together basically, and is actually consumed by unrequited love for her best friend called Tinsel, which is a great name, and is also fascinated by death. I guess she starts being pulled into more darker feelings. This says, a visceral journey into the twisted psyche of a woman navigating love, obsession, and her most disturbing cravings. Sign me up. So then next up, I've done a bit more of a broader group of books about complex relationships. So these are not your normal boy meets girl, they fall in love, they have a third act breakup, and then they get back together at the end kind of vibe. These are more twisted, messy, complicated relationships. We start off with Big Swiss by Jen Bregan, following 2 women and is a sort of contemporary literary fiction. It follows a woman called Greta who transcribes therapy sessions, and she starts to become obsessed with one of the clients of this therapist who she's transcribing the sessions for. She names her Big Swiss, but she doesn't know her name and she's never met her. Manages to bump into her and a relationship happens that is complex. Next up I have Paradise Rot by Jenny Hval, which is translated from Norwegian. This is a kind of literary horror, follows a woman called Jo who's an exchange student and she moves in with a new roommate who is quite intense, has no boundaries. They have a very codependent relationship. This starts to affect the house itself. It was super weird, but in a good way. This is House of Beth by Kerry Cullen, another literary horror. This is about a woman who has a breakup with her girlfriend and as a result kind of flees back to her hometown, leaves everything behind, once home, reconnects with her high school best friend who's now a widowed father of 2, and they kind of have a whirlwind romance. But obviously is very messy because one, she's still kind of not over her ex-girlfriend. She has a lot of trauma. She's also overshadowed by her new husband's late wife, who seemed to be the perfect woman in all respects. A very traditional, perfect housewife, mother, wife, etc. Then I have Pizza Girl by Jean Kyung Fraser. This follows an 18-year-old pregnant pizza delivery girl, and she starts to become obsessed with a stay-at-home mother called Jenny who lives in the neighborhood and orders pizza all the time for her son, and the relationship between them becomes a bit complicated. Then we have a contemporary literary fiction called Luster by Raven Lilani. This was a big book, a few years ago, but if you haven't heard about it, again, we follow a woman in her 20s struggling through life. We love that start of a premise. She makes a series of inappropriate choices in regards to men and partners, and then she meets a man called Eric who has a family, including a wife who has agreed to an open marriage. Our protagonist finds herself moving into Eric's house, but not by Eric, by his wife, have a complicated relationship with her and with their daughter, who is adopted and is black. Our main character is also black, so they also have a interesting dynamic. There's a lot to navigate there. Next up, we have one that came out last year called Disappoint Me by Nicola Deenan. Love this cover. So this is more of a queer literary fiction. So this follows a trans poet who falls for a charming corporate lawyer. Both of them have quite a lot of baggage and trauma to overcome, and I think it just gets a bit messy, as these things are wont to do, but it looks really interesting. We then have our first book by Melissa Broder on this list called Milk Fed. I gave this book, again, 4 stars. This is a contemporary literary fiction too. This follows Rachel, who is 24, and she is pretty restrictive with her eating. She's obsessive with her food rituals and I guess being in control in that way. And then she meets a woman called Miriam who works at her favourite frozen yogurt shop and wants to feed her. And they grow closer, start having a relationship. But I remember it being a unique portrayal of a sapphic relationship. Next up, we have Moderation by Elaine Castillo. This follows a woman called Girly, who is a content moderator and is really good at it. She keeps getting promotions. She's rewarded by her bosses, and she's sort of on the forefront of virtual reality content moderation. And she's loves her job. But then she meets the co-founder of the company called William and finds herself falling in love and learns that things might not be as great as she thought. I read We Had to Remove This Post, which is also about a woman who works in content moderation. And I read Sky Daddy, which also has the main character works in content moderation. And I just find that so interesting. That is a job I would never want to do. But it's crazy that that is a real job. I seem to be very interested in books where that is the protagonist's job. So then we have Spoilt Creatures by Amy Twigg. This is another sapphic literary fiction about a 32-year-old woman called Iris who's living at home with her mother, working a dead-end job. Why do all books start this way? Maybe it's just books I like that start this way. Anyway, she meets a woman called Hazel who lives at a women's commune on a remote farm. At the farm, the women can be loud and dirty, live and eat abundantly under the leadership of the gargantuan Blythe. Drawn to Hazel and the possibility of new start away from a world of men who have only let her down, Iris throws herself into this alternative way of life, seizing on new experiences and hidden desires. When a group of men arrive at the farm, the commune's existence is thrown into question, culminating in an act of devastating violence. Now, I love cults. I will read anything about cults. I find it fascinating. And so a women's commune where there's no men, that is something I want to read about. Also beautiful cover. And then finally, we have a book I read I think last year. Yeah, and I loved this. This is a literary sci-fi called Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. This follows a robot, essentially, that has been designed to be the perfect girlfriend. So she is designed to satisfy his emotional and physical needs. She has dinner ready for him every night, wears the outfits he orders for her, and adjusts her libido to suit his moods. She's not the greatest at keeping his place spotless, but she's trying to please him. She's trying hard, and she's learning too. Her owner says he loves that her AI makes her seem more like a real woman. So she starts to explore human traits such as curiosity, secrecy, and longing. But becoming more human also means becoming less perfect. And as their relationship grows more intricate and difficult, she starts to wonder, does he really desire what he says he wants? And in such an impossible paradox, what does Annie want herself? That is relevant. I'm constantly seeing at the moment people with AI boyfriends on ChatGPT, and I don't feel good about that. And I feel like this is the next step. It was such an interesting read. I loved the character of Annie. Okay, we are on to our third section. This is where we get into horror. I know we've had a few horror books so far, but this is where we really get into horror. The first one I'm going to talk to you about, I actually finished yesterday, and it was amazing. I gave it 4 stars. It's a literary sci-fi. It's called Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield. Again, this was really big when it came out a few years ago. I'm just late to the party. But in case you're like me and also late, this is about a woman called Leah and her wife, Miri. Leah works in deep sea exploration, which just could not be me. I felt claustrophobic reading these sections where Leah is under the sea. That is my worst nightmare. But she goes on a deep sea exploration. She goes on a trip that should last, I think, 3 weeks or something, and then doesn't come back for 6 months. And when she does come back, she's not the same person she was when she left. It follows like obviously their love, but also the loss and the grief. It was very beautiful and it was beautifully written. Like I said, it was really creepy in places. And I would definitely recommend if you haven't picked this up yet. Don't be like me and wait for years. Then we have Things Have Gotten Worse Since We Last Spoke by Eric LaRocca. I won't say much about this one because I think it's one of those ones that's good to go in blind, but it follows two women who connect in a chat room and form an online relationship. And this relationship starts to become a bit twisted. And that's all I'm going to say on that one. Look at the cover and tell me that doesn't look intriguing. The next one actually came out this year. I think it is out. Yeah, it actually only came out a couple of weeks ago. I haven't read it. It's called How to Kill a Guy in 10 Days by Shaylee Thompson. I think this is more of a light-hearted horror, more of a campy, fun horror. So it's a slasher rom-com in which a cinephile gets caught in the middle of a murder spree at a speed dating event and must use her encyclopedic knowledge of the romance and horror genres to make it as a real-life final girl. And I just thought that sounded fun. Like I said, I haven't read it, but I have seen some good things. So if that sounds up your street, I would definitely check that one out. Our next one is called Mayfly by CJ Lead. It's about a woman who works at what isn't called Disneyland, but is essentially Disneyland. She works at the happiest place in the world as every child's favorite ice princess. I think we can all guess who she's meant to be. But at night, when she's not working at Disneyland, she goes to dive bars and she tries to imitate the characters in her books, and she starts to get inspired by American Psycho. Cover makes me freaked out, so I'm sure I would be very freaked out by what's inside. Next up, we have Patricia Wants to Cuddle by Samantha Allen. I read this in 2022 and loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars. This is more of a campy, fun horror. A reality dating show, and it's the final 4 contestants, and they're sent to an island to have a week of drama. You know, you think Love Island. What they don't know is that Patricia, who is temperamental, lonely, and misunderstood, and living alone in the dark woods and desperate for connection. A whirlwind romp careening towards a last girl standing conclusion and a scathing indictment of contemporary American media culture, Patricia Wants to Cuddle is also a love story between star-crossed lesbians who rise above their intolerant town, a deeply ambivalent woman and her budding self-actualization, and a group of misfit islanders forging community against all odds. Oh no. Oh, everything's on low battery. My iPad, my phone, and my camera, so that's good. We are working against the clock. Next up, we have A Hunger Stone by Kat Dunn. Again, haven't read this one. This is more of a historical horror. It's a retelling of Carmilla, which is the queer novel that inspired Dracula, about a couple who meet the mysterious Carmilla, who is weak and pale during the day but vibrant at night, and she stirs something deep inside of the woman. I've heard great things, and I mean, who doesn't want to read a sapphic Dracula? Like, come on. Next up, we have one that again came out literally yesterday. This is For Human Use by Sarah G. Pearce. This is about a new dating app called Live that offers the solution of loneliness with the ability to date a corpse. Interesting. A twisted tale of modern love that bends every genre, sears itself into your brain, and presents a horrific romantic comedy unlike anything you've ever read before. Then we have Kill for Love by Laura Picklesmere. This is more of a satire about a woman called Tiffany, who is a sorority sister struggling to keep her sadistic impulses at bay. After a frat party hookup devolves into a bloody, fatal affair, Tiffany realizes something within her is awoken, the insatiable desire to kill attractive young men. So again, it's giving American Psycho. We have Comfort Me with Apples by Catherine M. Valente. I read this in 2023 and gave it 5 stars. This is a really interesting book. And again, I don't want to say too much because it's really short and I feel like the not knowing what's going on is a big part of it. So the description is, Sophia was made for him, her perfect husband. She can feel it in her bones. He is perfect. Their home together in Arcadia Gardens is perfect and everything is perfect. It's just that he's away so much and so often. He works so hard. She misses him and he misses her. He says he does, so it must be true. He's the perfect husband and everything is perfect. But sometimes Sophia wonders about things. Strange things. Dark things. The look on her husband's face when he comes back from a business trip. The questions he'll not answer. The locked basement she's never allowed to enter. And whenever she asks the neighbours, they can't quite meet her gaze. Hell yeah. Okay, I'm back with the last 10 books on my list. So these books are going to be about shall we say, unconventional relationships. Relationships that are a bit unusual, a bit strange, very weird, although no judgment from me if you happen to be in a relationship like any of these. So we're going to start with Bear by Marion Engel. I actually read this last year, quite recently, and I thought it was so good. It is the most controversial book in Canada, apparently. And if you say something like that to me, I'm going to have to read it. So this follows a woman who is quite shy, quite reserved. She's a librarian, and she spends most of her time around books rather than people. And then she gets chosen to go to a remote cabin where someone has died and left their book collection to the institution where she works. So she goes to catalogue it. And when she gets there, she finds a bear, a tame bear, and they start a relationship. And the relationship is what you're thinking. And I feel like you just have to read it before you judge. Okay? Then we have our other book by Melissa Broder called The Pisces. This follows a woman called Lucy who's writing her dissertation and has been for a long time. And then her and her boyfriend break up. She kind of hits rock bottom. She's not happy with her work. She's not happy with her life. So she decides to go and stay in her sister's beachside house and dog sit, but really just get away from everything. And then she meets a weirdly attractive swimmer down by the beach one night, and he's maybe not human. I assume you can guess from the title that he is half fish. Do you ever just think what am I doing with my life? Reading these sort of books, and yet I love it. Next we have Mrs. Caliban by Rachel Ingalls. This is more of a classic weird girl book. So this is from 1982. So this follows a housewife who is she lives in the suburbs. She's pretty lonely. Her days are pretty boring. And then one day she hears a radio announcement that this sea monster has escaped a local institution. And she ends up having a romantic affair with said sea monster. He is referred to as Frogman. And that's all I'm going to say next. It's weirdly emotional and also very much a spiral of insanity and into a woman's mind, which is one of my favourite topics. Next up, we have one I'm actually reading right now. Well, not right now, but currently. I'm about 75% into this. This is Blob, a love story by Maggie Sue. This follows a young woman who, again, kind of isn't happy with her life. And then one night, she's drunk outside a club and finds a blob. It does have eyes and it does appear to be sentient in some way. And so drunkenly she takes it home and then realizes she can mold it into a man, into a perfect man. It's definitely a weird one. And I have been enjoying reading it. Next up we have Sky Daddy by Kate Folk. This also came out last year and I also read it very recently. I read it a couple of weeks ago. I loved this. I thought it was just going to be a silly, goofy time with a woman who's sexually attracted to planes. She wants to marry a plane, and by marry she means be in a plane crash. And that does sound silly goofy, and I thought it was just going to be just kind of unhinged. And it is, but it's also weirdly emotional. I found myself really, I hesitate to say relating to the character because, to be clear, we don't have the same interests. But I really liked her. I really cared what happened to her. I really rooted for her. Next up, we have Shark Heart by Emily Harbeck. So it's about a couple, a husband and wife, and a few weeks after their wedding, the husband receives a rare diagnosis that his physical body is going to transform into that of a great white shark. He'll keep his consciousness, memories, he's still intelligent, he's still got human intelligence, but his physical body will be a shark. That sounds bizarre, but it also seems like quite a moving book and just a really interesting love story and also just story in general. Then we have Hard Copy by Fien Veldman. This is translated and it is a story of a girl who is a customer service assistant. So she sits at a desk and spends long days printing letters for people. And so her best friend is a printer and she talks to the printer and she genuinely believes that the printer has a connection with her. And then things take a turn. I really want to read this one. Then we have Troll, a love story by Johanna Sinsalo, which is again translated from Finnish. So it's about a young photographer who comes home from a night out to find a group of teenagers in the courtyard of his apartment, and they are taunting a wounded, helpless young troll. So in this world, trolls are I guess just another kind of species that lives among us. And so he takes it in and doesn't suspect that this choice to take in this young troll will have really crazy consequences for his life. And then we have Pandora by Anna Paula Pacheco. I hadn't heard of this one until I was doing research for this list. It sounds bonkers. So this follows a professor who falls into a romance with a pangolin. She's in lockdown during COVID, and in her apartment she has a series of animals. She has a pangolin, a swarm of insects, and a giant bat, as you do. And so she sort of starts to lose her grip on reality. And then finally, my final book recommendation for you is Open Throat by Henry Hoke. So this is about a lovable, lonely, queer mountain lion who is fascinated by humanity. That's all I need to know. Like, I'm going to tell you more about it, but for me personally, that's all I need to know. They spend their days protecting local homeless people, and they are grappling with the complexities of their gender identity and what it means to be sentient. And it just sounds so interesting, so unique. How many books have you read narrated by a mountain lion? Especially a queer one? Like, this is the representation we need today in 2026. That is my full list. That's 40 weird, dark, and messy books for you that centre around love and relationships. And I hope that you have a lovely February and enjoy Valentine's Day. I'm going to sign off now, and thank you for watching, and I hope I see you again soon.